Welcome back to Talk of the Now podcast. I'm your host, Gene, and we're back this week with Jason. Jason, how are you?
I am doing well, sir.
Well, we're going to get right into it. Last we met, we talked about the Star Wars, and we kind of had a few technical difficulties at the end, but we basically gave some summary of all three. We gave our synopsis, if you will, of A New Hope, which wasn't even called A New Hope, I think, when it first came out,
It was not. No.
and Empire Strikes Back, which I think was called Empire Strikes Back when it came out.
Yes.
And then, so we kind of left off in the Empire Strikes Back, and we didn't quite get to Return of the Jedi. So what we're going to do is, I think we'll lay out Return of the Jedi, and then we'll sort of go back into our overall whatever. You like to
Gotcha.
make a? You look like you want to make a point.
No, I was just thinking hand motions to we're gonna lay into yes.
Lay it out.
All right.
Um, yeah. So the Return of the Jedi, looking back. Okay, let me just start off this way for those. I'm trying to give it to an audience for like random person that's like, okay, I guess I'll try Star Wars and see what it's going to be. People like my wife and your fiance. Um,
Right.
the
Right.
basic premise: Luke, Leia, Han have escaped Darth Vader and his cronies, and well, they almost did. Han was given to Jabba the Hutt when we left him in Empire Strikes Back. Now he's on what planet is that?
Tatooine.
Tatooine, which was Luke's home planet.
Yes.
And so basically, this is about Luke and Leia and Lando, who has turned. Well, he wasn't. He sort of double crossed them because he sort of had no choice. But in this case, they go back there and they're trying to rescue Han Solo, and I don't want to give away too much. Well, who cares? We're giving away a little bit. They're trying to rescue Han Solo, and then they go on from there. And Luke wants to finish his training to be a Jedi, and they're discovered all of a sudden, which is sort of, looking back, it kind of I don't know how much this was a sort of, well, let's just do this again. They decided to build another Death Star seemingly overnight. I don't know how many years this was between Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, but suddenly they have a new
Yeah. It's like where'd that come from?
they
Like,
have a new Death Star, new and improved
well,
Death Star.
maybe they always had a backup. Who knows? Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, it reminds me of the what is that movie, that stupid movie with the oh gosh, the guy that made Mallrats,
Oh yeah.
where they talk about the Death Star contractors. That's a pretty funny bit actually.
Yeah.
Um but anyway, that's the pretty much the premise. And of course, they've got to go back and try to destroy this new Death Star, same old way, and all kinds of craziness happens in between.
Yep.
That's about summing up to you.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Pretty good.
Now, my first memory of it
Mhm.
was I'm looking back in my mind's eye to the early '80s, and I can remember going to Greens Corner, Norcross, Georgia, I guess it would be,
Yep.
with my cousins, and we're all excited. I mean, I had watched my exposure to Star Wars was basically if you watched movies in the early '80s, not going to movie theater, you pretty much watched them either through rental or through cable. Cable kind of came before the whole rental market, where you would watch something on HBO or Showtime. That was huge. Late '70s and early '80s, we had these. Remember, you had the boxes, and you would press the actual
Yep.
analog number. And
Yep.
Showtime, I think Showtime and HBO is where I first found Star Wars and Empire Strikes Back. So I knew about it and I was excited about going to, and that was 1983, right?
Yep. Yep.
Meaning I would have been around a 7-year old, I guess. And so, anyways, I remember being really excited about it and really liked it. What was your memory of it?
We went and saw it at the Stonemont Twin on Memorial Drive. Right at
Still there?
Razor, of course not. And neither is Green's Corner. It's a Walmart now. Um,
True.
but Green's Corner is where I saw Back to the Future in 1985.
Me too.
Um, crazy. But so
Could have high fived you going in to see it.
I know. No, I remember going there, and I one of my many regrets from childhood is opening the toy that they gave out at the opening show. They gave out a theater edition Luke Skywalker
No way.
on a card, and what do? I open the toy and play with it.
Still got it, or is he lost?
Oh, of course he's lost. Yeah,
Yeah.
No, I don't have any. I don't have any of my originals.
Mhm.
But yeah, I don't know how much that figure is worth now, but it's definitely worth a lot more than free, which is what we got
Well,
for.
oh,
So
by the way, speaking of those, sorry to interrupt. I had those original Star Wars, not everything, but I had a lot, good bit, and I intentionally tried to keep them through my adolescent years into high school. Put
yeah,
them in the attic. My parents moved. Somehow they're gone. I have no idea where they are.
well, out of the package is not really worth anything,
Very
honestly.
tragic. But I would have
You
liked to
know,
have them and passed them on to my kids.
yeah,
To play
yeah.
with.
It's more sentimental.
Hmm.
But yeah, I remember that. I remember being real excited about obviously the Ewoks. You know, that whole forest of Endor, the other planet.
And they were supposed to be Wookiees originally, right?
Yep, they were.
I always wonder what that would have been like had they had those. I guess it would have been a more serious movie had they been Wookiees.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of why he changed it to be more appealing to everybody.
Hmm.
But yeah, I just remember, obviously you watch the movie and you're like, oh, I want that. I wonder if they're going to have that toy. And of course they had that toy. They made everything. Everything from the tiny little sets of like, this one little gun that you saw in the movie, and they made a whole set, that toy of it. You could buy all this stuff.
I
I
think I had
remember.
the Ewok Village. Did you?
No, I never had the Ewok Village actually.
Okay.
They I remember the mini ones. Do you remember the mini toys with the little metal? Like
A
you couldn't
little
move.
bit.
Yeah, I remember I had the one from the Empire Strikes Back. I think I had the Cloud City one, and
Mhm.
then I don't remember what those were called. Somebody's gonna shoot me for not knowing what they are. I don't know if they were done by Micro Machines or whatever, but
Uh-huh.
they were tiny ones. I remember having a bunch of those.
Ah.
My parents got me a bunch of those because they were cheaper. Um, but yeah,
Well,
I
my
just
wish list as a kid was AT-AT. Never got one.
got one of
Had one of
those.
those big AT-ATs,
I
and I
did.
really wanted a Millennium Falcon. Never got one.
I never had a Millennium Falcon. No, I didn't need that. I had an X-wing.
I had an X-wing. Yeah.
I
Tie Fighter would have
had,
been cool. Didn't get one.
and I never got a Tie Fighter. I had a Snow Speeder, which is still my favorite of all the
Ah.
ships. Is the Snow Speeder from Hoth. Um,
And I think I
the,
had Luke's little hover machine from New Hope with him and Obi-Wan would ride around in. Yeah.
you mean the Land Speeder?
Is that what that was called? Okay.
Yeah,
Thank
that's
you.
cheap.
I thought the land speeder was the onesie where you like a horseback, like you get on those and
No, that's a speeder bike.
speeder bike. Okay, gotcha. I
Get
know
your toys
you're
right.
much
Get
more
your toys
well
right.
you're much more
Um,
well in tune with the Star Wars
um,
vehicles.
Well, I don't know the reason I say this because I saw a online and I wanted to get it for one of my nephews so bad. It was a actual full metal land speeder pedal car, and it looks
Wow.
like a land speeder with the 3 engines, and it's got the little windscreen. And I'm like, oh, dude, I want that for them. That'd be so much fun. But his parents would kill me. Of course, how would I get it out there? But anyway, so yeah, I think yeah, obviously the speeder bikes through the forest. I mean, who didn't want a levitating motorcycle basically, you know from
Yeah.
those things. There are people that made like mock-ups of them and had them like run as a motorcycle, and then they put the way they made them. This is really neat. You need to look this up sometime. Anybody listening can look it up too on YouTube or whatever video streaming you like to use. There are people that made them, and then they put this mirror skirt around the bottom of them to make it look like they were floating.
Ah.
They're really just reflecting the ground. It's really a cool effect. I was like, that's a cool way to do it because obviously, to our knowledge, nobody has made one that floats and actually flies.
Right.
But anyway, that whole thing, I remember do you remember the audio, like the tapes that you would play and then you'd read along in the books? You would play a tape and you could read it as like a story book.
I think I've heard of them. I don't think I had any.
Yeah, I had a bunch of those. I know your cousin Scotty had a bunch of them,
Mm.
and so did Russell Wall. But we would do that, and it was either that or you had the audio with the ViewMaster, click, click. You know, the ViewMaster.
Hmm.
Those are always fun. Um, you just remember going into friends' houses and just the amount of like Star Wars stuff they had.
I
You
think
know,
that Return of the Jedi might have had some of the cooler. Maybe it was because they kind of evolved, kind of cooler set pieces,
yeah,
if you
yeah,
will.
I agree. I mean that whole generator shield thing.
Mm. I
The
mean, yeah,
everything.
you
Yeah,
could tell their special effects had come a long ways as well
yeah.
in
I mean,
just that eight
it had
years
been
or whatever that was,
yeah, it'd been
8 or 9 years.
probably it probably been closer to 9 maybe total since they'd started.
Did
Maybe
they start on the first one like in 75 or something like that?
something like that. Yeah.
Wow.
Um, but you got to think. I mean, again, even for 1983, it was still the best. I mean, a lot of other they were starting to kind of branch out and help out other studios with their special effects.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously back then it was still like, when Lucas says do mine first, it takes precedence. So I mean, yeah, just the forest scenes, which we know were filmed a lot in Muir Woods, just north of San Francisco, and probably in Redwood National Forest.
Right.
Um, but and then a lot of the studio stuff was shot at Pinewood in England.
Is there any reason he did that particularly? Why he went over to Pinewood? Was it cheaper? Was it more economical for him?
I mean, he'd been using them forever.
Mm.
It was a
I was just
way
thinking
he.
a guy from San Francisco going all the way over there to do his shooting.
Well,
You
think
know?
about Lucas. Lucas wanted to do things his way, not Hollywood's way,
Right. Right.
and that's why I always respected him
More convenient
because
than going to build your own studio, I guess. If you don't want to, if you don't want to deal with the
right.
Hollywood scene.
Well, and he wasn't in Hollywood either. I mean, Skywalker
Right.
Ranch is in Marin County,
They
which is
didn't have
just
anything in San Francisco area, so
no.
I
But I
would
mean,
guess.
he had the money. He could have built that if he wanted to.
I just meant if they like there wasn't any independent, studios like Pinewood or anything in upper, Northern California
Not at
area
that
at the
time,
time.
no.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
and being in Marin County where he was, he used some of the landscape close to there. Obviously,
Hmm.
Muir Woods is just south of there. I've actually been to Muir Woods. So a
Where did
lot of
he film American Graffiti? I've never looked into that.
that was in Modesto. So that's
Ah,
Modesto and some parts of San Francisco.
okay.
So yeah, I've been around part of that. But
Hmm.
he actually filmed it where he is from. So that was so you know, I kind of like I kind of like the whole landscape in that movie. I think it kind of the contrast of the desert to the forest,
Right.
you know,
Right.
that whole thing, and then the massive ships in between. Some of those ship sets. I mean, those are just great pieces of art.
Yeah. Okay. So, what is your what are some of your favorite scenes or parts of Return of the Jedi?
Well, I mean, I've already mentioned the speeder bike chases. Um,
Yeah. Which, by the way, it's crazy to go back and look some behind the scenes of how they did those speeder bike chases, especially for the time that they did those in.
yeah, a lot of physical stuff that's
No
just like,
special effects in our sense of the word.
well, no, yeah, no computer generated, but yeah,
Hmm.
actual special effects, so physical effects,
Right.
which are harder to make look real. Honestly,
Hmm.
you would think the real stuff would look real on camera, but it doesn't always. Um, but yeah, those are always good. I didn't really care for the whole Luke and Vader thing and the Emperor. I don't know why. I just never cared for that part of it. It was just a little
Well,
too
yeah.
dark for me, I guess. And I thought it was kind of overdone a little bit, if I'm honest. Um, but
I
I
was
mean,
actually going to say that that was my least favorite part. I felt like they drew out the Vader um Emperor, you know, what do you call it? Vader Emperor Luke Skywalker saga. They drew
Yeah.
that out for too long of a period.
Right. Um, I think I think obviously it ended well. I mean, and the redemption of Anakin had to happen now. I don't like the redone versions where they put Hayden Christensen in as a ghost, because I'm like,
Right, me either.
why would they have young Anakin? They should always have the old, like they have the old Obi-Wan. They didn't put they
Mhm.
did that. They put Hayden Christensen in, but they didn't put
Ewan McGregor.
Ewan McGregor in. So I'm like,
Right. Yeah, that's a good point.
why? Like, why are you
Yeah.
giving it old? Is it because he was still like the last time it may have been like, oh, the last time he was human, he was in that form, you know.
Yeah.
But still, like, none of us knew that it was that other guy, whatever that other
My
guy's.
my least favorite thing about, I mean, if we're going to talk about the remade Return of the Jedi, or the whatever you want to call it,
Yeah,
updated one, is just the dance bar scene and Jabba the Hutt's thing where they redid that whole thing.
that was too much. It was
It was
too
way too
much.
much. It just made it a different movie.
It just drug on too long. I mean, I get what they were trying to do, but at the same time, like, no, it was fine the way it was, where it was just understated.
It gave it, yeah, exactly. It gave it too much of an episode 1 feel with
Yeah,
the Phantom Menace. It gave
it
it too
was.
much of that feel.
It was kind of a precursor for us.
Mhm.
But as opposed to, like, I don't know, it just, the little things he did to touch up those movies I was fine with, like the little stuff, like the extra these things in the background. Okay, that's good. Those are neat little things. Be subtle. But the whole we're just gonna change this whole bit, like,
Right.
yeah, I'm with you. I'm like, no. That was just, it was painful is the word.
Mhm. Yeah. I mean, it's okay to change nuanced things that now that you have the technology, you can make this explosion look better, or you can make,
Right.
whatever look better. But
Yeah,
I don't like adding unnecessary things.
right. Yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah.
If it adds to the story, okay. If it adds like some clarity,
Mhm.
to that, then maybe. But other than that, it's like,
Mhm.
it's not necessary, and it's tiring.
It's interesting. I just recently went back for the first time and watched some of the outtakes of
Mm-hmm.
of New Hope, and it actually kind of cleared up the story a little better for me, because there's the one scene where he goes into the desert and he meets his buddy, and they're just talking about their future dreams. And I thought that was kind of cool because it kind of gave you get a better idea of who Luke was, because the movie itself kind of leaves out, kind of
Yeah,
makes
him.
his back interest as a kind of a mystery. You know.
Right, and or like the scene where the actor who was playing Jabba the Hutt, that whole scene where Han talks to Jabba,
Hmm.
which they left out of the original completely, and then they put it back in for the remake, but over the guy that they had, which was just a big fat guy. They put, a computer generated of what we know as Jabba the Hutt, because they didn't
Right.
have a creature as Jabba the Hutt. They had a guy in the original that they just left that whole scene out in the theatrical version the first time,
Right.
and then they put in that whole thing with the obviously CGI Jabba the Hutt.
Yeah.
Um, but I give it to Industrial Light and Magic. I mean, they do the best job of anybody. Um,
Sure. Yeah.
things like in, you know, just like I said, just adding the little details like through a window or something like that. I mean, that's fine. But Industrial Light and Magic also still builds physical models and
Hmm.
effects. They don't just do, because we all know from A New Hope, they said they went out and pillaged every battleship and aircraft carrier model they could in the whole San Francisco area, and they made that the Death Star. That's why it all looks kind of military World War II, like, because it's what it is. They pieced together a bunch of models, so they made it work.
Wow.
Which that's our art side of stuff that I love about cinema. As corrupt as Hollywood can be, and as just awful as that, you have stuff that comes out of it like that. Now, it didn't come out of Hollywood technically, which is kind of also why I liked it, because Lucas always did his own thing. and he thumbed his nose up to them, which they returned the favor by never giving him, an Academy Award. So, uh, there's something to that to be like, ooh, he's the mysterious guy up in middle northern California making movies.
Right.
Before there were studios around every corner like there are now.
Right.
There was Lucasfilm as the largest independent filmmaker. But when you get to a certain like amount of money, you're probably just another filmmaker. You're just another studio. You're not independent.
Well, there's something to be said for anybody that kind of goes about things their own way.
Yeah.
Tyler Perry might be a great example of a modern one.
Yeah.
Somebody that just sort of did his thing and made a ton of money doing it his way and found his own base that loved
didn't care what other people thought about it either. Didn't care that people were probably saying, well, you're probably going to be too much talking about this, the kind of thing, or you're doing it too much this way. It's like, I'm doing it the way I want to. And that's why I liked about Lucas. And, that's why I told people when episode 1 came out, I didn't care how bad it was because we got something out of Skywalker Ranch that we hadn't had in 16 years. And it was just nice to have something. So anyway, it's just an interesting aspect of that. And I think you got to see its zenith with Return of the Jedi. Cause like you said, the effects house, your sound design with Skywalker Sound, and Ben Burt and all those guys that are just brilliant artists that made that work. I mean, Skywalker Sound is just phenomenal. They're what made me love sound so much, and sound design in movies was Skywalker Sound. Simple thing of like, the blaster noise for the TIE fighter is tapping a pair of vice grips on a cable. Like we all made that noise on like power line poles, the little stabilization cables that come down. You go out there and go, choo, 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 like, and that's the sound. That's the Foley sound artist.
Wait, here, let me hit my mic boom, see what happens.
Yeah.
You may not be able to hear that, but I can hear it.
That's what I'm saying. You hear sounds, and they would hear sounds like those guys would carry around recorders on their vacations because they were so obsessed with sound. And sound of like what's it called? The sound of the lightsabers. Was moving the microphone in front of a speaker. It's feedback.
The other thing that I appreciate, it's so funny how much I think a lot of it is like Lucas's genius, but also sometimes you fall into genius, sometimes you fall into just great ideas, and you fall into just to creating something that everybody likes and you didn't realize they were going to like it. I mean, just even like the Boba Fett saga, how that just sort of became an animal all its own. Like he was just a secondary character in the movie that, I
mean, I don't think the man had more than 10 minutes on screen.
Yeah, but he's like, everybody loved the character. It's just funny how like little things like that can happen. Or like or what's his name? The alien, the guy that says it's a trap.
Oh, Admiral Akbar.
Yeah, Admiral Akbar. He could have had a bigger role back then, and too, it just leaves you with that sort of sense. That's what you want out of movies. Like, man, I wish they had about 8 more scenes with that guy, or I wish we could have a background of that person. You know what I mean?
Right.
So that kind of intrigues me a lot. So anyway, I think that's a pretty good summary, Jason.
Yep.
I think we'll wrap it up, but maybe we'll do a third part.
Maybe
we'll see.
Will there be a trilogy of podcast?
I don't know. We'll see about that. Anyway, thanks everybody for joining us, and we'll see what happens.
Bye.